So welcome back to the second full week of the year, and I'm trying to keep to my promises of doing these YouTubes every single week. As always, I've got my lazy helper with me. So it is Betty. She is head of Coach Callum's HR department. So if you've got any complaints, she's the lady to kind of go to. So I thought of this one, I was thinking about some topics to kind of go over. And I do think one that's coming up quite frequently at the moment, particularly with the rise of Mounjaro and weight loss medications, is this term around food noise. And it's quite an interesting term because when we actually look at the research from a more kind of like science-based perspective, it wasn't really a term. It is actually something that's come from the patients, particularly those on weight loss kind of medications, where they kind of started to notice that when they were taking them, this food noise was kind of disappearing from their brain. And I find it like a really interesting topic, particularly when we look at ACT and acceptance and commitment therapy and some of the techniques that I use with my clients, because it's been proven again within the research that it can be really good for this type of stuff, particularly getting used to accepting some of these thoughts that are kind of coming into your brain, and more so just not getting hooked on them. So I thought what I would do is I will put my whiteboard to good use and maybe do a little bit of an explanation of the difference between fusion, so having a thought in your brain and being fused to that thought, and actually how we can maybe learn the skills to diffuse from that. So let's go to the whiteboard and see how this goes. I don't know if Betty's gonna come. She might have a little nap. You know, it's been a hard day, isn't it? It's been a hard day. When we talk about fusion, it all kind of starts with a fairly normal thought. So if we might have a thought that I want a biscuit, right? Fairly normal thought. I probably have it most evenings. If we are not fused, then we'll have this thought and it usually just passes. The problem when we start being fused by it is we have that thought and it starts to kind of like spiral down. So this might be followed by other things such as saying, I want a biscuit, oh my God, I've failed. You might have the thought that I'm not good enough, or I've got no willpower, And then it might be that you give in and you kind of say to yourself, I deserve it. That's all I need. So you're trying to concentrate and you watch TV and you say to yourself, I deserve it. I've been really good. And you may even give in and eat it. And that is because with fusion, we believe the thought rather than it just being passing information in our brain. We believe it, we're fused by it. We see it as a command rather than just information. And that tends to be what the actual problem is. But luckily, when we looked at ACT, there are techniques that again have been scientifically proven, and I use it with all of my clients, where we can use techniques to help us diffuse. So as you can see, I paused the camera because you didn't want to see me drawing. Obviously my drawings are not amazing. I used to be a fairly good drawer, but obviously not anymore. But a very simple kind of metaphor that I like to use for self as context is you are the sky and your thoughts and feelings should be the weather. And the weather passes, right? So if we think about them as like clouds passing by, like rain, storm, changes all the time. And when you learn that ability to observe your thoughts rather than becoming them, it can be absolutely game changing. And not just for things such as food noise, but also for all aspects of life. So if you are someone that maybe struggles with anxiety, struggles with depression, struggles with low mood, and when we look at ACT as well, is that struggle that actually tends to make things worse. It creates a bit more of rumination, it creates a bit more of a spiral. So think of a time that you have been anxious, for example, in the past. You know, this is something I've definitely struggled with. And when we're taught that these emotions are bad, or maybe there's something wrong with us, so anxiety, same with food noise, but we shouldn't be having it, then it's easy to start to panic. So you end up getting anxious about being anxious, or you start trying to get rid or fight against the food noise. So you start thinking, I shouldn't be having this thought. What is wrong with me? Is this ever going to go away? And it's very common with clients that they kind of say to me that I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to have these thoughts. And the difference when we looked at ACT is, again, it's that acceptance. It is part of being human. For a lot of people, they're not broken. There's nothing necessarily wrong. It's just how we've been taught to deal with these things. So when we start to allow these thoughts to pass by, so I've got some, it's meant to be a cloud. You know, the cloud here is like, I want a biscuit, and we just allow that to kind of come into our brain and pass. You know, I'm a failure. Like lots of people have thoughts like that. Again, normal. I'm not good enough. You know, again, another thought, because our brains just do not have a delete button. And this again is another premise of ACT, is they don't have that delete button. Sometimes thoughts pop into our heads, but when we're not fused and we don't hold it in our identity, this is where things can really start to change. And when we talk about acceptance, acceptance doesn't mean that we have to like it. So if we talk about, you know, it's raining outside and you don't like the weather, then you don't have to like it. You just put on a coat, you put on your jacket, and you crack on with your day despite the weather still being there. And it's the same with our thoughts. When we learn not to fight against them, it can completely change things for us. And there's many different diffusion techniques that you can kind of use, but a real simple one that you can start to kind of practice is, rather than I want a biscuit, I have to eat it, I deserve it, you simply say to yourself, I'm noticing I'm having the thought about wanting a biscuit. You might use the thanking your mind technique. So you go, thank you mind for telling me about story, or telling me the failure story, or telling me the I've got to eat that kind of story. There's some other silly ones, such as saying it in a funny voice, and all of these different techniques that you can kind of use. And if you are interested in finding out more about it, then get in touch, because I have a 3-week course with a bit of an introduction into this stuff as well, that can be really, really helpful. But I feel like the main kind of message is, it is completely normal. Once we start to, or stop fighting against it, it can change not only your mental health, but all of your behaviors. And you just realize just how effective this can be.